Okay, so this question comes from Clane, who says, I very much subscribe to the sandcastle theory for Labour's likely large majority. As a result, what do you think is the likelihood of Starmer serving the full term as Prime Minister? Could he resign before the next election if he proves to be unpopular once under more scrutiny? If the polls show that other parties are overtaking Labour before the 2029 election, how might Labour react? So the sandcastle theory, which Andrew Marr talks about in his essay for the New Statesman this week, is this idea that Labour could get a big majority, a tall majority like a sandcastle, but a very fragile one that could just be swept away by the tide. So actually that majority, the size of that majority, isn't a sign of how long the support would last. Freddie, what do you reckon?
All parties, once they get into office, suffer from disunity, and that's what will force Keir Starmer out. If he can maintain unity within the party, if he can make sure his MPs stay on side, then he'll have many fewer difficulties. But I think the reason that might be likely, i.e. the reason that there might be disunity and MPs might be annoyed with the government and with the leadership, is the problems that Keir Starmer has to solve. I think that Rachel Reeves' decision to adopt and inherit the Tory fiscal framework will constrain the government to such an extent that they won't be able to offer the radical solutions that the problems the country faces requires. And we'll see that play out over 2-3 years. And also, we've got to remember what type of MPs are coming in. Let's say the polls are right and they do get a very large majority. There'll be many Labour MPs who have won in seats that are traditionally Tory, i.e. not traditionally Labour, in much the same way that in 2019 you had Red Wall Tory MPs who were very anxious, very conscious of the fact that it wasn't really a Tory heartland seat. So therefore, they needed something, i.e. levelling up, to go back to their electorate in 5 years' time and say, please re-elect me. I know you only lent me your vote, as the phrase was back then, but now I've delivered. They didn't, and they got increasingly annoyed. And that rebellion was actually staved off for a while because of COVID. But as soon as all the MPs came back to the House of Commons, it kicked off. So I can see a similar dynamic happening, I think, with the Labour government. Having said that, the Labour HQ have been extremely strict in managing selections. The test of loyalty has been extremely high, so that'll help them manage the party. There'll also be this broader sense that we've been out of power for 14, 15 years. We need to get something done, so let's get behind the party. And also, we've got to remember the left in the Labour Party is very splintered at the moment. We've got splits between the young and the old. The campaign group is not as strong as it was. Having said that, I do think there's a risk. I don't think Keir Starmer is going to go in the first term, but I do think this disunity will hamper him going forwards. What do you think, Rachel?
Yeah, it's also worth remembering that getting rid of prime ministers mid-term in such quick succession is a relatively unusual thing. 5 prime ministers since 2014, 3 in this parliament. We're not like Australia, where the parties there have a habit of, as soon as the party is losing support, just going nope and switching leaders. And I think a lot would depend on those kind of mid-term electoral events like local elections or by-elections, where you could see how much of the support that is showing in polls actually translates into real life. But I think something quite dramatic would have to happen for Labour to get rid of Starmer, the party to get rid of Starmer before 2029. The question is, I guess, going to be if Labour go into 2029 and win it, but with a vastly reduced majority, because obviously it's not going to be anywhere near as high as we're looking at for this election, then what do? Then do they have a decision about switching leaders kind of at that point? Our final question, a fun one to end on. This comes from Alex, who says, I am hosting an election night party. What are the key times to look out for? And is there any time to have a kip before the majority of the results come in? Great planning, Alex. Freddie, I would say that the best time to, if you want to take a break and have a nap, is probably immediately after the exit poll. What do you think? I mean, you'll be staying up all night, I imagine.
I will, yeah. I recommend getting up the NS Live blog and following that religiously. And getting the timings there. But yeah, take a nap after exit poll if that's your vibe. The problem though is that you sort of miss the momentum, the anticipation. It's, you wake up, you're drowsy, you're not as excited.
Yeah, I think if you want the full emotional election night experience, you kind of do have to stay up all the way through. It's in 2019, I think I went to bed at around 6 a.m. But then I wasn't working the next day. So you kind of, if you want to be full of energy on Friday, well, we're going to have like huge news. We expect, Keir Starmer becoming Prime Minister, a Labour government, everything that entails. If you want to be full of energy for that, you might want to take a break sort of in the middle of it. But if you want the emotional journey, then I would say stick it out, stay all the way through, and don't go to bed until the early hours of the morning.
2 things I'd look out for: Nigel Farage, Jeremy Corbyn. If they both get elected, you've got a narrative there that a new big Labour government is going to be attacked from the left and the right, and I think that might be a theme of the next government.
I would absolutely agree with that, but I would also add to that Liz Truss in Southwest Norfolk and Rishi Sunak in Richmond and Allison. Liz Truss facing the independent challenger James Bagg, as well as the Labour and Lib Dem candidates, and Rishi Sunak facing Count Binface, the satirical candidate. So I would look out for Rishi Sunak's seat regardless, because Count Binface will be on the stage with him, and that's always fun when you have the Prime Minister with the satirical candidates behind them.